YouTube, Vinyl community, Beach Boys fans, random people on the internet. My name is Giggins, and we are here today to talk about the Beach Boys' Sunflower. As you've seen by the previous commercial I made, all month long, we're going to be talking about Sunflower and the many parts of its story. It's a pretty heavy story. But I thought we'd start sort of at the beginning. And I'm calling this video It's About Time. Which I think is a pretty fitting title for, because one, it's the track from Sunflower, but also it's about time the fact that we're talking about the other guys in the band and their contributions, their lyrical ideas, their music, their input, their overall creativity, and how much of a humongous element that was to the success of this album, but the group going forward after Smile. Which we've talked about in moments on this channel before, but I wanted to focus a little bit more on it with this one because for me, the group effort is what made, for a lot of people, for a lot of Beach Boys fans of this record, the group element is what makes this album come to life, where it feels like everyone is on the same terms of contribution and how much they put into this record. So after Smile fell apart, in the middle of '67, you can tell from reading about the Beach Boys at that time, or even just listening to the music that came afterwards, that Brian was a little disinterested in wanting to put so much effort into the work of the Beach Boys. He had been the Beach Boys for, at that point, 5 or 6 years. And he was tired. I mean, you can't blame the guy. I mean, between 1962 and 1967, they put out a ton of albums and singles and live shows and press conferences and touring and just non-stop making something. And especially when Brian decided to stay home and the guys went out on tour, he would make all this music, they'd come back and sing to what Brian had made. There really wasn't much of a, hey, we should change this, or I'm not sure about that chord, or what if we do a guitar over here? There wasn't much of that. It was, oh, Brian made this, and now we're going to sing on it. And it worked. I mean, it just worked. They were used to that setup, and it was extremely successful for a few years for them that way. And then here Brian was doing all this brilliant work for Pet Sounds. It came out. It didn't do as well as Capitol Records wanted it to. In England, it was a whole different story. But it was enough for them to do Good Vibrations, which became one of the best-selling singles they ever had, and led Brian to start working on Smile earnestly. And as Smile just kind of fell apart, I think his lack of enthusiasm in putting so much effort into something started to show. That he was just worn out, and he kind of saw that his efforts were either not being seen for what they were, or he just got to the point where he was like, I give up. I just don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something else. Because especially in the 60s, Brian got bored easily. He was always working with somebody else, having someone else write with him, produce with him. Him and Mike were doing stuff for people in the early days. He was always wanted to do something outside of the group. That was nothing new. But anyways, because of Smile falling apart, they put out Smiley Smile and Wild Honey, which Brian was definitely heavily involved with, as were the other guys. But then when you get to Friends, things were starting to change. You know, on this one, it was a lot of group writing on Friends. Al, Carl, Dennis, they all really stepped up with their lyrical contributions and music. And for the first time, we were hearing Dennis Wilson originals on this album with Be Still and Little Bird, and really giving a whole new feel to the group that wasn't really there before. 2020 definitely captured on that theme as well in a much more polished production, I guess you can say. I mean, Friends is one of my favorite albums of all time, but 2020's got a little bit of a different production feel to it. And that one in particular, at that point, Brian had sort of taken himself out of the group between different troubles he was going through, and the other guys really stepped up to the plate, including Carl, who produced I Can Hear Music, which is one of the most stunning pieces of work they ever made, ever. But it was showing that they can do it without Brian, which I think was enough of a push for the guys to be like, all right, well, we can do this. We're not done, which a lot of people had told them they were done, including Murray. everyone was telling them that they were finished. But in Europe and everywhere else in the world, people wanted to see the Beach Boys and hear new music from them. But in America at that point, it is nothing to do with them at that point. It was sad. So the other guys really stepped up. Bruce was starting to show off that he had all these chops that were there. I mean, he proved himself well before he joined the Beach Boys. I mean, he was doing Bruce and Terry, he was producing, he was all over the map well before he joined for California Girls. So to see him step up and be like, hey, well, can I start writing songs? Boom, there you go. Dennis was really taken off. He was on fire. If you listen to that digital-only release, the 2020 sessions, there's so much Dennis Wilson stuff on there. Just him on a piano or him doing lead vocals for stuff that may have been taped over by different people later on. He was really on top of his game and showing that he can be a part of it too. Carl was getting really, really good at producing and leading the ship, really. He was basically in charge of the Beach Boys' direction. He was the director forever after that. And what was impressive about Al, too, was he was stepping up. I mean, he helped produce that new version of Cotton Fields, which was a humongous hit. I mean, he really showed he can do it, too. And one thing about Mike that was really cool was, we all know that famous line, don't F with the formula. Who knows if he really said that or not, but... for a guy that was really stuck on, we gotta be commercial, we gotta do this, gotta do that, he was extremely adaptable to the changing times and realizing it was sink or swim. He was either gonna be part of this group and change with them or not. And having a paycheck's pretty cool. So you have to hand it to him that he was able to adapt really well to these new songs. When you hear him screaming on All I Wanna Do on 2020, that's a whole different Mike that would have done a whole different vocal even just 4 years earlier. So everyone in this group is changing. Everyone in this group had a whole new dynamic and a whole fresh appreciation for writing music to bring to this band that, in a sense, was kind of starting over again. And by the time they dropped off with Capitol and signed on with Warner, that hunger and that desire was intense. And they started doing these little tiny tours, playing at colleges and, vaudeville theaters and stuff. It was like they were starting all over again and kind of proving their worth. And especially during that time when they switched over to Warner's, I think that really invigorated Brian. I think that really sparked his interest to be like, wow, a fresh start. We're away from Capitol. We can go do something else now. And also knowing that Warner's was fully behind them. Mo Austin was like, what, the Beach Boys? This is great. Let's promote them. Come on in. So they had this whole new fire under them. And the best part about all of this was it wasn't one guy doing everything. It wasn't just a Brian Wilson production with the other guys singing on top of it. It was 6 very, very talented individuals working together to build this absolute piece of magic that they would do for another few years after that until things changed when On the Summer came out. But this was the beginning of this spark, this second wave for them, if you catch a wave, if you will, that really showed them that they can make something magical. And the production on Sunflower is a magical production. It sounds like nothing else they've ever made. There's some sort of sprinkled dust they put on this album that makes it sound like it comes from some other world. And my takeaway from all of this, because I want to keep this video under 10 minutes here, my takeaway from all of this is everyone was stepping up to the plate, one, to prove that they were a band beyond just Brian, and 2, to help each other out. They were a group. They were a family. They wanted to do this and prove this to the world because they knew they had fans out there. And when they got together and made these brilliant new songs, and they had a plethora of material to choose from, when they would go to Warner and get rejected for this version of the album or that version of the album, they'd go back and do it again with more new songs. And they kept coming up with new songs. There was no shortage of music that they can use. And some of it's never been released, or they used it for years after they wrote it in 1969, 1970. It's incredible. So for me, when I look at that album cover, and it says Sunflower on it, I think of it like this. 6 amazingly talented people were blooming in that California sun. They were sunflowers. They were sunflowers. They were this bright ray of sunshine. No matter what horrible things were happening, surrounding them at that time, business deals, you name it. There was some bad stuff going on in that camp at that time. They bloomed and they started over again, and there was a regrowth. It's amazing. It's truly, truly amazing. And so that's all I wanted to say. I want to hear your thoughts about this as well and see what you think about it as the group coming together to build something completely different from what they had done a few years beforehand, showing all of their strengths and becoming an even tighter unit of individuals coming together for one common goal. So my name is Giggins. This has been It's About Time, talking about the other guys in the group taking over and doing some amazing work. My name is Giggins. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Enjoy Sunflower Month. Take care.